This is part 2 of the things to memorize by heart video. In part 1, I mentioned that in this series of videos, I will only highlight the most basic things which you must memorize by heart. If you just memorize these things, you will not get A1 or A2. Okay, you need to memorize and then at the same time you have to do the TYS so that you get to know how to apply the things that you memorize. Okay, for the mole concept chapter, what you need to remember is actually the definition of AR, relative atomic mass. Okay, the definition of relative atomic mass, and as well as the definition of relative molecular mass, or the MR. Okay, there is very little difference between the definition, so take a good look at it. And then after that, you need to know the definition of isotopes. Okay, this one you should have learned it in the atomic structure chapter. Alright, part 2 of the mole concept mind map. Okay, this triangle must remember. So this triangle contains 3 formulas. First formula, mass equals to mole times AR or MR. Second formula, mole equals to mass divided by AR or MR. The third formula is AR or MR equals to mass divided by mole. So these 3 formula in the triangle you must memorize. Then you need to know 1 mole of any substance has 6 times 10 to the power of 23 particles, and 1 mole of any gas occupies 24 dm cube. Alright, so have to memorize this box. Then after that, you need to know what is the meaning of molar mass. So when I ask you what is molar mass is actually mass of 1 mole of a substance in gram or gram per mole. That is the meaning of molar mass. For example, molar mass of aluminium is 27 gram. Mass of 1 mole of aluminium is actually 27 gram. Okay, so this is molar mass, mass of 1 mole of substance. The next things, you need to know the 2 formulas for the concentration of solutions. One is gram per dm cube, the other one is mole per dm cube. Okay, the next chapter would be on acid bases. Okay, acid bases, part 1. So first of all, you need to know the definition of acid, a substance which produces H+ ion or hydrogen ion when dissolves in water. That is the definition of acid. Then you need to know the definition of weak acid. What do you mean by weak acid? Weak acid means acid that ionizes less easily to form H+ ions in water. Okay, that is weak acid. So weak acid is acid that ionizes less easily to form hydrogen ions in water. Now, ionizes less easily can also, is actually equivalent to dissociate partially. So you can also say that weak acid is acid that dissociates partially to form hydrogen ions in water. For strong acid, that will be ionizes easily or dissociate fully. Okay, weak acid and strong acid. And then the properties of acid, you should have learned it in your lower side. Now it's the chemical properties of acid or the chemical reactions. For example, acid plus metal, you get salt and hydrogen. This one is actually in the chemical reactions mind map. Okay, the first few pages of the mind map, chemical reactions and chemical equations. So, and then acid and carbonate, what do you get? Acid and metal oxide or metal hydroxide, what do you get? So all these are the chemical properties of acid. Okay, likewise for how do you test for hydrogen ion, how do you test for hydrogen gas, how do you test for carbon dioxide, must remember as well. Part 2 of the acids and bases mind map. Alkali. So likewise, for acid we talk about the definition of acid. For alkali also there is definition for alkali. So what is an alkali? A substance which produces OH minus or hydroxide ion when dissolved in water. Okay, so this is the definition of alkali. And alkali is also base that is soluble in water. Okay, and what is a base? A base is either metal oxide or metal hydroxide. Base is either a metal oxide or metal hydroxide. So this part you have to remember as well. Then similar to acid, after that we have to learn about the properties of alkali. All these properties, chemical properties. Okay, and this is the ionic equation for neutralization reaction. Must remember this. Okay, all these chemical reactions, you should have learned it in the chemical equations mind map. The last part of the acids and bases mind map is basically all the oxides. So you need to know acidic oxide is non-metal reacts with oxygen. So non-metal oxide is acidic oxide. An example is sulfur dioxide. Sulfur is a non-metal, so when sulfur combined with oxygen, the product, which is sulfur dioxide, is an example of acidic oxide. And what is the chemical properties of acidic oxide? Reacts with alkali or bases to form salt and water. So you need to know acidic oxide, non-metal and oxygen combine, and it reacts with alkalis or bases to form salt and water. So likewise for basic oxide, you need to know metal. So basic oxide basically is metal combines with oxygen and reacts with acids to form salt and water. And then for amphoteric oxide, reacts with both acid and bases to form salt and water. And the three examples of amphoteric oxide, you must remember these three. And then lastly would be for neutral oxide, the three examples of neutral oxide, must remember. Okay, for the indicator, you need to remember these two, methyl orange and phenolphthalein. So methyl orange, it is red in acidic solution, yellow in alkaline solution. Phenolphthalein, colorless and pink. Okay, most plants grow best in soil that is neutral or slightly acidic. So acidic soil. So how to neutralize the acidic soil is to add quicklime or calcium oxide or slaked lime or calcium hydroxide. So these two chemicals you need to remember. What are they for? To treat acidic soil. Okay, then for the salt mind map, you need to know first of all the solubility table. This table must remember. So I ask you, for example, all chlorides are soluble except, so you have to tell me these two. This is lead 2 chloride, this is silver chloride. Next one is the salt preparation. So these three salt preparation methods, remember. So in order to prepare a salt, first thing is we need to find out whether the salt is soluble or insoluble. So these two methods is for preparing soluble salt. This one is for preparing insoluble salt, precipitation method. Okay, and then for titration method, you need to know that it is used for preparing the spa salt, sodium, potassium, ammonium salt. As well as the steps, you must be able to roughly tell me the steps. Then the next thing would be the QA, Qualitative Analysis. So basically you need to remember this table. This is the cation, then anion, as well as the gases. So I'll ask you, for example, how do you test for chloride ion? So you must tell me, first of all, I have to add dilute nitric acid. Then after that, I add silver nitrate solution. Then if the solution contains chloride ion, I should get a white precipitate, and the white precipitate is silver chloride. Okay. Alternative another way of asking would be, so just now that one was for anion. For cation, I'll ask you, for example, how do I test zinc ion, Zn2 plus, using sodium hydroxide? So in order to test for Zn2 plus, first of all I have to add sodium hydroxide, and then I should get a white precipitate. And if I add sodium hydroxide in excess, then the white precipitate should be soluble, or the white precipitate dissolved to form a colorless solution.